Hey everybody, happy Halloween. I've been working on a class for Autodesk University this year. It's AU for those of you that have been before, of course, and it's in Vegas the week after Thanksgiving. And the topic that I'm going to be covering in my class is PaintFX. If you've never used PaintFX before, it's a brush-based interface for getting 3D objects into your scene. And there's lots of things that you can do with them once you're in Maya. They're based on curves, so anything that a curve can do, you can attach a PaintFX stroke to. They can be converted to geometry. And there's lots of things that I'm going to cover along those lines in my class at AU this year. So I've been working on the class a little bit, and I thought I'd take a break and do a Halloween post based on PaintFX. So I had a little bit of fun just creating a couple of custom brushes, and I thought I'd run through that. The first thing I'll do is just run in and grab under my rendering menu set and grab a brush out of the visor. I'm going to start off with a mesh brush that's a furry teapot. And I like to start off with just a default brush because it gives you sort of an idea of where to start. And it has a couple of things that potentially could help you out depending on what you're trying to do. And in this case, we're going to create a pumpkin. So the PaintFX brush in this case is made up of a few things. First of all, tubes, which is where PaintFX gains a lot of power. The attribute editor is very well laid out, I think. There's some creation options, shading and lighting, and then it moves down into the growth, or the way that this brush splits into its different components, and then some of the displacement and some of the animation and sort of curl and wiggle and some of the noise that goes into different brushes. So they're all really well laid out. And the first thing I'm going to do in this case is I really don't want fur on my pumpkin. I'm going to go up under the mesh, and under thorns on mesh I'm going to turn this off because that actually is what generates the thorns on my brush. PaintFX by default is just a render effect. It's a post process that gets put in the viewport after creation time using the Maya renderer. What I like to do, of course, is to get a little more flexibility, is to convert these into geometry. So in this case, the thorns on the mesh after the fact aren't going to do me much good. So let's take a look at how we can create our pumpkin. I'm going to first go down and turn off my flowers because that's what generates this arm on the teapot. And then I'm going to go up to the width scale and change the profile of my overall stroke, which, if you think of this sort of unit here, this main body as one single tube, I'm changing the width of that one tube. So I want this to look and sort of be shaped a little bit more like a pumpkin. So pumpkins come in a lot of different shapes, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time getting the exact shape that I want. Basically, I want to give you the idea of a way to get to it and an end result. So now I want to do something with this spout. I'm going to go down to the leaf section, which is, if I turn this off and on, you see that's what generates that particular appendage. And I'm going to go down to the leaf start, because this is where I dictate where this thing sits on the surface. And I'm just going to change the leaf angle so that it sits, the first angle just is going to grow straight out. This second angle, if I had a second one here, would generate sort of this other direction, but since I only have one, that's what I'm going to wind up with. So I'll sink it down just a little bit so that it sort of sits inside the surface, maybe taper the bottom a little bit, and let's get something like that. That'll work for me. Now in this case, there's a hole at the top, so if I go back up to the mesh section, we can fix that by turning on end caps. And then we'll go down, and I want to do one more thing. Let's change the leaf bend just a little bit more so you can really kind of get a little more personality to the pumpkin. And so there you have it. There is some shading effects that we can use if I want. I can go in and maybe change this to something a little more pumpkin-y. But again, if I'm going to shade this after the fact, I don't want to spend a lot of time shading this particular pumpkin. Once I'm done, all I have to do is save this as a brush preset, and it will appear up on my shelf up here. So I've already got one that I finished that's a little bit better in shape, and you can see that there's my set of pumpkins. And then once I'm done, of course, all I have to do is convert these to from PaintFX to polygons, and now they'll render in my scene. I can go about texturing and shading them the way I would anything else in my scene. So just to have a little bit of fun, I threw together a few more, and we've got a little graveyard scene here that we can use as a piece of geometry. PaintFX will sit on top of, or you can paint on top of any PaintFX geometry. And so in this case, I'll make this paintable. And let's go into textured mode because we've got a little bit of a substance texture on top of this. And then I'll look at a couple of these. I've got some tombstones, so if I want to populate this with some more graveyard headstones, we could do that. Of course, all of the shapes are completely customizable. I've got some bones. If I want to just sort of stick some bones out of my graveyard, I can do that. I might want to go in here and maybe turn down the overall size of these guys because they're a little bit large. You can control that with the global scale. And then of course I've got some zombie arms that come up out of the back of my tombstones. So it makes for a nice little scary scene. Oh, of course, one of the cool things about PaintFX 2 is that since we can draw in any geometry, and by default, it can create just simple textures. So if I reset my template brush and just go to my PaintFX tool, I can actually draw directly. Actually, let's make this paintable. I can draw text. Oh, let's don't draw my arm there. We can just draw some text right on the surface. So there is my super scary Halloween post with some PaintFX brushes. Like I said, nothing fancy, just having a little bit of fun, and hopefully that may give you some ideas of some things you can do with PaintFX. And if you're interested in the Autodesk University, the class that I'm teaching at AU, check it out at autodeskuniversity.com. Thanks for watching, everybody, and happy Halloween.